Hey friends, welcome back to the Coop Chicks in Charge podcast. We're recording in Edmond, Oklahoma, here at Yay on Broadway, which is our Chicks in Charge Coop, our clubhouse. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, you can see that I am here with Stacy Bozarth, one of my biz besties, and she has been in Chicks in Charge for what do you think, 2 or 3 years now?
Yeah, I think actually maybe a little longer than that.
Okay. And so Stacy was one of our speakers at our She Leads conference. And we talked about what do we want to share that all women need to know about. And it was friendship.
Yeah.
Because that's what we hear about so much is that we feel like we've lost our friends. We don't know how to make friends. We're busy in our lives. And we've got this epidemic of loneliness, which I know you're going to talk about some more. So Stacy is a John Maxwell speaker and leader, and you go in and talk to a lot of organizations about this topic. So I want you to tell us a little bit about, first of all, why you chose friendship as a topic that you wanted to share and why that's so important in our lives. And then we're going to get into, because this is a part of our Read and Lead series, these episodes, is the work of Shasta Nelson on friendship and how we can improve the friendships in our lives, which will then add to, according to research, longevity, happiness, even financial success, all the good things.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think how I really came to this work was because I really felt called about helping people connect. I call myself a connection advocate, and I really love to help people kind of reconnect, oftentimes to themselves first, and then that allows them to connect to others in more meaningful ways. The work itself, I feel like I was called to about friendship. Part of it was our discussions about what we wanted to bring into that conference. But part of it was, friendships are tough.
Yes.
And I think most people that I've talked to, and I've talked on this topic now, probably 20 times.
Oh, wow.
And every audience is full of us, and we're just trying to figure out how to do it. Yeah. It seems like it should just be easy. I literally remember the first time when you and Patty came to me about the She Leads conference, and we talking about friendship and thinking, what am I going to learn about friendship? I mean, what am I going to learn to teach about friendship?
But is it one of those things because we feel like we should just know how to do it?
100%.
And that it should just organically happen, that it's going to be easy, and that's not true.
Right. Those are I call them the lies of friendship, because I think those are limiting beliefs that we have about friendship. Friendship is work. And when friendship gets deep, it can get messy.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we have bought into the concept that if it's not easy, then it must not be the right friendship. Or if it's not easy, then it's not really worth my time because we're all so busy. But really, what we know about relationships is that when we go through hard times together, that's actually when we deepen the relationship. We come out on the other side stronger for it. So in our culture, we're kind of being sent mixed messages about friendship. If you look at the advertising and how they portray friendship, it does look like sunshine and rainbows and hearts and BFFs.
Yeah.
And there's an element of that is true, but really friendship is meant to be a deeper level of connection. When I teach connection, I love Brené Brown's definition. It has given me so much freedom in helping people understand it's not necessarily about you. It's not necessarily about me, because it's the energy that exists between us where we're able to give and receive, where we end up feeling valued, seen, valued, and heard.
Yeah.
And the final part of her definition is where you derive sustenance and strength from the connection.
Ooh,
and
good.
that, my
That's
friend,
really
is why we need to learn how to be better friends. We need to learn how to do that level, that connection called friendship, and understand it on a different level, because we truly do derive sustenance and strength. So when you were talking about taking life in a longer way, longevity, it also increases the quality of our life.
Quality,
Yes,
Yeah.
our vibrancy when we have meaningful connection in our life.
Okay, so let's break that down then. So
Okay.
we're going to talk about 5 friendship threats, and then we'll talk about 5 steps to improving our friendship. So we are talking about having healthy, meaningful friendships and these are people that we want to do life with. And I know one of the things you'll talk about too is that could be a short period of time, and then that can be a long period of time, and what the differences are in the types of friendships that we have. So let's start with the 5 friendship threats, because I know sometimes we may recognize that we do these on our own, so we want to stop doing that.
Right.
And then recognize if some of our friends are doing that, and then what we can do about it. So let's go over that list. And so
Okay.
this is from Shasta's book. So she says the 5 friendship threats are jealousy, judgment, non-reciprocation, neglect, and blame. So when you look at that list, kind of what does that say to you?
You know, it brings to me another concept that Shasta laid out beautifully. She has this triangle of habits or behaviors that are fundamental. And it's not just in friendships, these are fundamental in all relationships.
Okay.
But I love how she describes it. She says the fundamental basis is positivity. And positivity, not like, Pollyanna positivity, but positivity as in the energy that we're creating when we leave our time together. We feel a little bit better about ourselves, or we feel a little bit about each other or our world out there.
Yeah.
And that might not happen every time, but consistently it needs to happen. So a couple of those words were kind of heavy and dark.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about a foundation of positivity, when I speak about this, I oftentimes say, I don't think any of us woke up this morning and thought, oh, who's the most passive aggressive, negative person that I could spend, a large majority of my day with today?
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't. We think about people that we want in our lives, that positivity can be a smile. Positivity can be someone who's very present. Positivity could be a hug. Positivity could be a word of encouragement. Positivity could look a lot of different ways rather than just a smile on our face, right?
Right.
So we need that. And so we migrate to that, especially in newer friendships. That's especially important as we're getting to know somebody. We want that time together, that energy we're creating to be positive, or honestly, neither one of us are probably going to move forward.
Right.
So that's sort of the fundamental baseline in her triangle.
Okay.
Loved it. One of her other, I don't know what you call that, lines, would be consistency.
Yes.
And consistency is really the undoing of more friendships than we care to admit. I mentioned earlier how busy we all are. Our culture has set us up for failure in the area of consistency. Oftentimes, friends don't live in close proximity. So then it becomes something that needs to build in that consistency that brings you together. Groups like Chicks in Charge consistently bring people together, women together, so that we can begin to build friendships. And that's a really important part. Once you get beyond kind of that superficial friendship, that new friendship of just being brought together, and it's almost like the person or people that you migrate to in those meetings. Once you get beyond that, it becomes about intention. And
Right.
it becomes, it's you have to step outside what brought you together and build in new areas of intentionality, or the friendship's just not going to move forward.
Well, that's interesting that the 2 things that you said there, positivity and the consistency, those are two of the basis for Chicks in Charge, because we promote, and has absolutely been the case in the last 5 years, that it is a group of positive, like-minded women who believe in supporting one another. So therefore you would have those encouraging words. You would have that feedback that's going to be encouraging, versus some of these negative things that they're talking about. Jealousy. We don't exhibit jealousy, within the club. We're always about, we can all have success. We can all lift each other up, and we're all better for it. It's a no judgment zone. We're all in different places in our lives, personally and professionally. And then what you're saying about the reciprocation and the intention. So getting to that next step is, if it's non-reciprocated. So then if I reach out to someone and invite them to coffee, and they come, and then the person never reciprocates, is that always a bad thing? Because you and I have talked about that before, where a lot of times it's the extrovert, the more social butterfly, that's going to invite people out. So what would you say that really means on the non-reciprocation, and when should we take that to be maybe a red flag, or that this friendship's not going anywhere, versus that's just the person's personality type?
I love that you asked that question, because it's one of my soapbox moments when I'm speaking. I hear so many women, and I have felt this myself. I am always organizing this. And I could get an attitude, and you are.
I am an organizer.
Yes,
but yeah.
But they kind of get a chip on their shoulder. They get resentful. I'm sorry, they, including me, because I've been in those shoes. I try really hard not to go there any longer, because what I've come to understand is we all have different giftings, and we're all in different seasons of our life. And just because you're the organizer all the time, most of the time, doesn't mean you're not in a good friendship. Let's go back to that energy that exists between the two of us. What is happening when you come together with a person that you're always organizing, and you have this energy that exists? What is that? Is that positive? Is that helpful? Is that healthy? When you leave, how do you feel about your time together?
Yeah. Do you feel energized, or do you feel like it just sucked your energy?
Right.
Which way?
And sometimes it will suck our energy, right? If we are going through a hard time with a friendship, or a friend is going through a hard time. But the majority of the time,
Yeah, right.
when I come together with people, I evaluate how did that experience go? I feel like that's a much better gauge about whether or not a friendship is worth the effort.
Right.
Maybe you're the great organizer, but maybe the other person's a great listener and a great encourager. And so you feel really seen, valued, and heard in that moment.
Yeah.
And so I really encourage that, because I hear so much of it. The other thing you brushed on was taking the initiative to ask somebody out. I mean, sometimes it can feel a little awkward. It can
True.
feel, when you're trying to come out of just Chicks in Charge, and you say, any chance you have time for coffee next week, or something along those lines. And a couple of things can happen. First, that friend might have time in about 3 months. Well, if you're trying to build a new friendship, that's probably not your best plan.
Yeah.
Nothing personal. It doesn't have to do with you individually. It has to do with where this person is at that moment. Move on to the next person.
Yeah.
Then the other thing that can happen, you ask a friend to go to coffee, and you sit down and you think within several minutes, yeah, I don't feel this. This is really negative. But I always encourage people to go on more than one coffee or tea or whatever you're drinking, but give it more than one shot, unless it's blatantly
with the same person.
Yes.
Okay.
Blatantly disrespectful. But if it's not that, and it's just awkward, it's going to be. Making new friends is awkward, which honestly is why I believe we stay in a lot of the friendships we stay in, because we don't want to go through the awkwardness.
Yeah.
We're comfortable. I argue we're uncomfortably comfortable. And by comfort, I mean, we're used to it. It's not that it's bringing us comfort all the time, but sometimes we just stay in friendships because they're convenient.
Right.
The third thing that can happen though is you go and you figure out, oh, well, we not only love Chicks in Charge, but yes, we love reading personal development books.
Yeah.
We love talking all things friendship, all things connection. We love, going for walks together. You
Mhm.
begin to build from there.
Yes.
But and that's ideally what happens. But I think a lot of us hold back and we don't put ourselves out there to ask somebody to go do something. A, it's uncomfortable and awkward, and we don't really like that in our culture. And
Mhm.
B, we just it's easier the other way.
Right.
We think it
Right.
is. We think it is.
Yeah.
It's really
Really,
not.
really good stuff.
Mhm.
Okay. So if those are the negatives and we know that that's what we need to look at in establishing a friendship, putting ourselves out there, doing the ask, how can we strengthen those friendships? So Shasta says there are 5 steps to friendships, and I'd like your feedback on this, Stacy. So, and you said the first one being open to it to
Yep.
begin with. Initiate consistently, add positivity, increase vulnerability, and then this last one, really interesting, practice forgiveness.
Oh, yeah. I want to go back to the vulnerability because that is the third line in her triangle. And vulnerability in our culture currently has so many perceptions, I would say. Many people think vulnerability is just having someone that you can tell every deep, dark secret to. Whether or not I've known you 3 days or 3 months or
Yikes.
30 years. I argue that's not vulnerability. I feel like that's a lot of responsibility put on somebody else.
So it's almost, well, it's a vent session. It could be a dumping ground. Like you don't want this new friendship to be a dumping ground because you may feel better in the moment. That other person, it's going to be emotionally exhausted and maybe shocked by what you said too.
Yeah.
And so that's why I know we talked about this the other day that Brene Brown says there's got to be that level of trust between the people first that both people feel. And so how do you know then how vulnerable to be in a friendship? How do you determine that?
Well, the research shows for those deep, deep, deep friendships, I don't really love the term best friend because it almost has like a power play to it. Best friends, but best friend. But to get to that really deep, meaningful relationship, it's about 200 hours.
Wow.
And
okay.
if you think about our busy schedules, trying to incorporate that much time, that's a huge investment of our lives to do that. Now, we're going to have small intimate moments between that. Shasta calls it frientimacy, where we begin to build that trust. Consistency is honestly where we begin to trust. What we know about the brain is that when we consistently see another person's response to different life events, then it helps us build trust even if we're not trying to. It's how we're wired. So that consistency, and what I like to say is that it's almost like incremental. As we spend more time together, our vulnerability increases. As in this and ideally, it's kind of goes hand in hand because you have more discussions, you have more topics to talk about. You begin to build out your web almost about things that you have in common and things you don't have in common. So many people get caught up that we have to have the big things have to be in 100% alignment or we can't be friends. I mean, our culture has done this to us, just divided us and pulled us apart in so many ways. And the research shows that is incorrect. It's actually more valuable to building those incremental things, to have things that can consistently bring you together, whether it's a hobby, whether it's how you spend your time, whether it's if you like to go bike riding, if you're a foodie and like to go eat yummy food, coffee drinker, those types of things. Camping, people who like to camp together are more important than some of the big things that our culture is currently saying you are either this or you're that.
Yeah, no, those are really, really good. And it makes perfect sense that the more hours, even before you get to that 200, you have such an understanding of each other by then. And and let's say that maybe you're an introvert and you have more trouble opening up than an extrovert might, and especially beyond the small talk phase, that you're going to feel you'll feel your guard come down, and so then you can share things, and then you see, it's almost like testing it out, right? So you share something and you see how they respond to it, and then did they do any of these threats to the friendship? Did they exhibit jealousy whenever you said you got a big win of some sort? Did they judge you for, you started dating a new person and they were super judgmental about it? Or I see this a lot. I'm past this stage, but now it's like our daughter's generations are this stage where the new moms might have judgment. Let's say they were college friends and then now they're young moms, and maybe they differ in their parenting styles or something like that.
They will differ, right?
And so you go through all these different phases. So just because you got along really well in one phase, you may or may not in the other, but also be aware that those things are going to come in, and then how do you handle that when there's differences?
Yeah.
So is that the issue that we have? And talk to us a little bit about those different phases of life that we have and how we tend to get our feelings hurt when we are in a friendship. Like I remember I had a dance mom best friend when my daughter was dancing. Well, then when our daughters weren't dancing anymore, what goes away? The consistency. Same thing with school friends. I had Cub Scout friends when I was a den mom, all those things, and those go away. And then there's that tendency to feel like, what did I do wrong? And so you're saying that maybe we didn't do anything wrong. That's just a natural thing that happens. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think you also brought up great points to the concept of vulnerability. We talked about what it wasn't, but I want to also reiterate that when you said, that positivity, being able to share happy things, great things that are going on with your kids, or great things that are going on with you, or great things that are going on with work, or and really having the people around you that can absorb that and can celebrate with you. Right. That's a huge part of being vulnerable. Many women keep our cards really close, and I because we've been burned in the past because of jealousy. So you just you quit sharing, and then unfortunately you don't feel seen, you don't feel valued, and you don't feel heard. And honestly, unless we're able to share in a friendship, we talked about the introvert, unless we're able to do that, then we aren't going to feel seen, valued, and heard. So it's important to be able to listen, but it's really important to be able to share as well. But the seasons of life, I love this concept too. I hope it really serves you well. The concept of moving through different seasons of life. I currently have emptied my nest, so to speak. So I had a lot of friends that were very associated with my kids and their activities. I also have transitioned to a different role in a business that I owned for 2 decades. So that also has shifted relationships as well.
Yeah.
And knowing what I know now about relationships, I don't have my feelings hurt. In other seasons of my life, I definitely have had my feelings hurt.
Yes.
But what I know now is those friendships that I had in different seasons, they were really important. They were really valuable, important friends and friendships. And just because in our current season, they're not an active part of my life, doesn't discount the season of life that we walked through together.
Right.
And I hear so many people say, whether they've left their church home, whether they've left a workplace, whether they've, had, empty nested, or, their kids have graduated. There's a million things that happen in our lives as women, like divorces, deaths. I mean, a million things change, moves, million things change our world. But instead of sitting and being frustrated that the friendship has changed, or that there really isn't a current friendship there, and then going back and being almost resentful, angry, discounting to those friendships, I prefer to have a celebration about what those friends brought into my life and that I hope I left them with.
That's good.
Because I feel like that is a more healthy approach to where I currently am in my relationship status and where I want to move forward to. And who's to say those friends may not come back in our lives?
Right.
I mean, we just never know. The other thing I would like to say about that is sometimes both sides of a friendship don't ever ask. They don't ever.
Yeah. You take out the consistency.
You take out the
where you
consistency.
used to meet or see each other at dance practice or the Cub Scout meeting or the camping or whatever, and then that goes away. There's that void there. Someone's got to do something about it.
Right. So there has to be intentionality and a
Yes.
whole lot of it for it to move forward. And I would say probably on both sides, but it doesn't mean both sides have to organize equally. But that element, I feel sometimes we let friendships slide because they never text us or they never call us, or if I were important to them, they would reach out, when in all reality, the onus is also on us. And it is, especially if it's a friendship where that energy was so positive and you were nourished in that relationship, sister, I put the onus on you, because if that was a helpful seasonal relationship and you would like to see if it could move forward, you need to start asking.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And you will know because, let's say, again, going back to the dance mom thing, if all you talked about was dance mom stuff during that, and that season of your life is over, you do have to sit and ask yourself, oh, well, what do I really know about that person beyond we had that shared experience? So if it did go deeper during that season, then you may already know, like, oh, well, we did have this and this that could be in common, or we could go on walks together, or whatever that thing is. But there are some times that is all you shared, was just that you worked together, or that you were in a club together, or something like that. So let's shift then into what we talked about earlier was, and how I really think that this will help our boss chicks that are listening so much, is the value of friendship in business, because that is an area where we spend so many hours a day, but it looks different now because we do have hybrid work and remote workers. And so what does friendship look like for them? And then share with us your quote about how many people say that they are lonely and disconnected now too.
Oh my gosh. And that is not a new number, but it has stayed relatively consistent. But it's 76%.
76%.
3 out of 4 people, women, when they are asked if they're fulfilled in their, or pleased with their intimacy in their friendships or connection in their friendships, 3 out of 4 are displeased.
Wow.
That is so strong. It speaks to, and you touched on it briefly, it speaks to, though, our culture. Our culture has set us up for this to become all too easy. If you think about, you used to see people at the grocery store, and now we have groceries delivered to us.
Right.
We would see each other, dropping our kids off, and then that is removed. We would see each other at work, and now if I'm not working on the same days you're working in the office on the hybrid schedule, or perhaps I'm working at home now, I don't see people there either. If we would see people all over in different capacities along those lines, and now things have become so convenient that we are now more isolated than ever. And they're way before 2020, there was a pandemic, which I used to use that term very loosely, but now I don't. But it was true. There was a significant issue with loneliness.
Yeah.
And it has only, unfortunately, gotten worse. And loneliness, how I think of it and how I describe it, is just, it's like your soul's craving and knowing that you are capable of more meaningful connection in your life. It is that raw. It's like when you're thirsty, you drink water. When you're hungry, you get something to eat. when you're lonely in this kind of form, then you're going to make efforts. You're not going to want to, but you're going to make efforts to build that meaningful connection into your life.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Well, I was trying to remember the year that I read, was it Bowling for One? It was a big research study about loneliness, and it was well before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because and the book was about bowling, was you used to have all these bowling leagues, and you would get out, and every Friday night you would connect with, of course, your own league, and then everyone else. And then now they were saying how you see so many people that go bowling alone.
Yeah.
And there are still leagues, but I get that point of that because of the pandemic and just how society is with relying so much on technology. And I know that some friendships can flourish by staying in touch with, sending each other funny memes and group texts. And I still like that too. But the in-person is where you see so much, where you feel the energy and the connection. Especially for me, it's the in-person. And I don't want to do a long text back and forth. To me, I'm like, pick up the phone. One of our friends we have in common, she called me the other day. She was like, this could have been a text, but I just hate texting. I want to talk. And I was like, no, that's good. I prefer that too. You've got the tone of voice, all that. It's just so easy for us to misconstrue. And maybe even, some of these friendship threats come through in a text because you don't know the tone in a text and things like that. So for us to not jump to conclusions or assume about, a communication, because that's something that I've seen happen too. Mm-hmm. And so so one of the things that I love the most about Chicks, and Stacy went with me talking about being open, that you drove with me for 3 hours down, and then we had great conversation 3 hours back, and had great wine and met, new friends through Chicks in Charge, the Frisco chapter. And I would say the feedback that I'm getting from these new members and the people that are joining is that they're like, I need to tap into a positive environment and a positive group of women where I'm going to feel supported and empowered, but also friendly and fun, because we want to make things fun too. And some business, associations and things aren't built that way. So I think that we're purposely building that. So that is one of our goals with Chicks, is to help form female friendships and encourage people to, like, you've got a cool friend, I've got a cool friend, like, let's all get together and see who might vibe and all that. I love that. Where else can people, in knowing what culture's like today, like you said, where can we meet new people?
The first thing I have a group that I'm speaking to or a client do is we just begin to look at like the sections of our lives. Mm-hmm. Where are we spending our time? Where does Stacy's time go on a daily, a weekly, a monthly, and even a yearly basis? And for me, it's sort of like a pie. And at the very beginning, and it's just like, some pieces are bigger than others. Family for me is a huge one. So family is a huge place that I spend a lot of my time. I'm going to be honest with that. And that's going to be a bigger piece in my brain. And then you begin to look at like church or school, or you look at your workplace, or what can I do with my work to meet more people, whether it's collaborations among different chicks and you go to events together and then you meet people at the events, or
co-working. That's what I did when I was lonely years ago. Mm-hmm. I found a female co-working space, and that is what led to Chicks in Charge, because it was a collaboration we did there. And so, yeah, that's because there are so many solopreneurs out there that, yes. So whether today you're having to remote work or hybrid work, or you're just a solo business owner, you do have to make that effort, which can be hard because we are spending so many hours working, but to know that there's value in taking that break and saying, I deserve to have a lunch out or a happy hour out so that I can make some new connections.
Well, and when you say deserve, and I don't, that's one of the frameworks I feel like we operate from sometimes. It's our body, our soul deserves it. Yes. Because it's deeper than, I feel like sometimes we feel almost like friendships are a luxury in our lives. And honestly, that is a disservice to us. They are more important than a luxury because the research shows about meaningful connection. It's more important than what you eat. It's more important than if you exercise. It creates it when we have that disconnect feeling, it creates damage at the cellular level
Wow.
that's equal to a lifetime of alcoholism, or smoking 15 packs,
Wow.
15 cigarettes a day. Yeah.
That's big.
Like
That's big.
it's
It's a necessity. Friendship is a necessity.
Friendship is a necessity, and we're not treating it that way.
Okay, so our goal then today is to treat it like a necessity from now going forward.
Mhm.
I think we've given some great tips here, and to ask ourselves, what do I really want in a friendship? And I love that you said, look at those different areas of your life, because you can then identify who are those
Yes.
people that I can connect with that, oh, I want to go for a hike this weekend. Which one in my, sphere of friends would be more likely to do that versus someone who's always up for having a glass of wine and deep discussion and all that. So it does take effort, but it's completely worth it.
Yeah, it just puts it out on paper. Write it down, and then take a screenshot of it and put it in your phone. So when you don't have that piece of paper with you, you pull it up and you begin to get a lot clearer, because that's why we have all of those section or pieces of pie areas of our life with specific friends in it. That will always be a robust group if we are getting ourselves out and about. But what's happening in our culture, like I said, we're working alone, we are shopping alone, we're Amazoning, we're doing so many things that are just pulling us out. So we've got to make sure that we are getting out of the house and getting to organizations that we could meet people that have common interests.
Yeah, no, that's
where it all starts. It all starts with a stranger.
Yeah, and that if you're a leader listening to this, whether you lead, in whatever capacity, an organization, business, all that, to recognize that it's important. And if you need someone to come talk to your business about it, then Stacy's your girl. Stacy, and we'll have all that information in our show notes about how they can connect with you. And then let's share with them what these books are. And we'll put this on our show notes too, these Shasta Nelson books, if you all want to deep dive into these.
Yeah, Shasta just posted not very long ago that this book just celebrated its 10th anniversary.
10.
I know. That's how long she's been screaming at the top of her lungs to get people's attention.
Friends.
She started working on this 5 years before she even released the book.
Friendships don't just happen.
Yeah. And the concept, is really, most of us don't need more friends. We need better friends. We need more meaningful connection in our relationships. And so she has a beautiful way of just laying it out. And when I first read this book, it was so interesting because it was so much of what my mom taught me, like my whole life about growing up, about, she calls them circles of connectedness. My mom called them circles of intimacy. But it was just, it's not rocket science, but again, it's not something that we're spending enough time on to really fully get the benefit. Frientimacy is about deepening friendships, how to deepen those friendships. When Shasta talks about friendship, she kept using the term intimacy, and people would be like, intimacy, like they would cross lines. It's like our culture, intimacy can only be in one category. So she kind of derived this term, frientimacy. And then she has a third book that I left in my car, and it's about the business of friendship. And it is about the importance and value of friendships in our workplaces, because that is often where we spend so much time and effort and energy and passion. And it's a natural place to build relationship. And frankly, employers, when they understand the importance of having a culture that supports friendships, it also helps people stay loyal to an organization. They stay put in an organization. They want to, they serve together in an organization. It helps to create a really healthy culture when friendships are fostered and embraced in a culture.
That
like
makes so much sense. That would help with your
retention
and absenteeism,
Yes.
because you're going to want to go to a place. Well, all these things about the threats to friendship. I mean, goodness, those could be threats with a business and the type of people you work with too. So you want to work with people who are positive and are going to be enjoyable to be around. And so as a boss, then I want to make sure that I am providing that culture and that environment for friendships to foster. And then we say, hey, I care about what's going on in your life, and I'm going to bring you tacos on Tuesday.
Right.
and host some happy hours or go out and do some fun things too. So that is really important. So I love that we touched on that. So thank you so much, Stacy, for being a part of this conversation today. And for all of you listening out there, if you want to find out more information about Chicks in Charge, we'd love for you to look into that, as well as just really take some time. I know there's some downloads on Shasta's website for you to journal and think about what you want in a friendship and how you can make that happen, because I think we believe that we're going to have a much better year in life if we make that a priority and put that more at the top of our list instead of not making it a priority at all, and then it ends up never happening because we keep kicking it down the road.
Totally. Friendship isn't a luxury.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys again next week.